We'll continue with the very important subject on the concentration. It's the heart of the Buddhist teaching. It will not be complete without concentration, without meditation. So we need to go deeper into the subject to try and understand what is this concentration. And it is the mental states that arises in our mind, concentration. Now, according to the Appamadena book, it describes more description on concentration, whereas in the Sutta, these courses, you do not get such type of description. You do not get the more detailed description of what is this concentration. Now, in the Noble Eightfold Path, it is under the Samadhi. Samadhi, mostly translated as calmness, tranquility, or concentration. Sila Samadhi, Samadhi, Panya. So we have the right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness. These are the three parts of the Noble Eightfold Path. And what actually is this concentration? But you do not have the samadhi as a mental state in the mind. So what do you have? We have this, in Pali, it is called ekakkhatthā. Ekakkhatthā explained as one-pointedness of mind. Therefore, they use this mental state as concentration. But why don't they put it as concentration instead of using one-pointedness of mind? Because if the mind do not stay at a certain object constantly, that we do not call that concentration. The mind is concentrated only when the mind is focused on one object, stays with the object constantly for a certain period of time. Then we have the various levels of concentration. So this ekakkhatthā represents concentration, but it is not concentration by itself. So, if it is not, then what is it? So, it has the function. It just has the function of the unification of the mind on its object. It unifies the mind. It gets all the other mental states together and direct towards one object. Now that is the function of ekakkhatthā. So it is not a concentration. It is just taking all the mental states, bind them together, direct them to one object. So mind do not have two objects at the same time. It only have one object at a time. If we have hearing, then we can't have seeing at the same time. Because when we hear, that there is this function of ekakkhatthā, directing all the mental state, including attention to the hearing. Only when it sees, then there is singing. So we think, we hear, see, smell, taste at the same time. But it is not so because of this ekakkhatthā, one-pointedness of mind, the function of unifying the consciousness, the cetasika mental states, to the one object. Therefore, we can't be seeing, smelling, tasting at the same time. But the mind is so fast, we think it happens at the same time, but it doesn't. It is one at a time. Now, if you are angry in seeing, if you direct to hearing the music, you may not get angry anymore because you have a different ekakkhatthā, a different mind now directing towards sound. Therefore, you don't get angry when you hear music. You may see your enemy, you get angry, but once you divert into another object by way of this ekakkhatthā, You don't get angry. So therefore, that is what it does. So it fixes the mind on one object at a time, and it must arise in every consciousness. In every consciousness there must be ekaggata, but does not mean that there is concentration in every consciousness. Now you must understand the difference between ekaggata and concentration, because ekaggata is not concentration, but they use ekaggata as concentration. Concentration is a concept. It has no reality, mental states that arise, known as concentration. When it is continuously on an object, then we call that concentration. But there is no concentration, mental states in our mind. Now, it is a concept. It does not exist as a mental state. Now, it is very deep, but you have to try to understand as we go further. Then only you could clearly understand the difference of what is this called concentration. So, what is its function? Its function is fixing the mind on the object. What is the characteristics? As not wandering, non-distraction. That is the characteristics of concentration. When the mind is fixed on the object, it is fixed there. It cannot wander onto another object because it must have one object at a time. So ekaggata cannot fix on two objects. Cannot. When it arises, it fixes at one object at a time. So it cannot wander over to another object before it finishes the thinking process and the registration. It is very deep and profound in Abhidhamma. So we have to learn to try to understand. And its manifestation as peacefulness. When there is concentration, the mind is peaceful. Now that we are describing unwholesome concentration, but there is unwholesome concentration, then it is not peaceful. We are talking now on wholesome concentration, when in the Noble Eightfold Path we say right concentration. Right concentration. Now what is the difference between right and wrong? Right concentration means that when you train your mind, develop your mind, cultivate your mind towards the proper object, like samatha object, kasinas, elements like the four foundations of mindfulness, then it is called right concentration because it produces calmness, peace, and thereby arises the wisdom. So it is called right concentration. Then what is wrong concentration? Wrong concentration does not produce wisdom or peace or calmness. Wrong concentration can produce agitation, instability, can produce fear, can produce a lot of suffering. Now what is this wrong concentration? For example, there is someone who produces a atom bomb. So his mind must be fantastic. His mind must be very concentrated in order to produce an atom bomb to kill people. So it could be due to greed. The concentration developed by way of greed or by way of anger. Or a simple thing like a young boy who plays computer game and can sit there for hours and hours, just enjoying the video game. That is concentration. But it is wrong concentration. And why can that concentration stay there for so long, hours and hours? Because of enjoyment. That concentration is what? It's associated by way of enjoyment, greed consciousness. So it can stay there. It enjoys, so it stays there for a long time. And what is the resultant there? No peace of mind. It enjoys. It gets tiredness. It gets disturbed if something happens to the computer, if it suddenly breaks down. So that concentration does not produce wisdom, does not produce contentment, stability. It is unstable. It wants to play again and again different games. So it is called wrong concentration, connected or motivated by greed or anger or delusion. Now what is concentration motivated by delusion? For example, like a meditator, he meditates and he gets into the signs, nimittas. He thinks he see Buddha and he thinks that he see heaven, he see hell. But it may not be the real thing at all. It is just hallucination. But he thinks, oh, I've gained psychic power. He can sit for hours and hours and hours, seeing a lot of all these things which is unreal. So, again, there is this concentration, but it is motivated or controlled by delusion. So, concentration can be wholesome or unwholesome, right concentration or wrong concentration. But there is no wrong mindfulness, remember that. Mindfulness is always right, never wrong. But in the first place, we say concentration is a concept. There is no actually a mental state called concentration. Only when there is a continuous enjoyment in the same object, then we call that wrong concentration. Then the word concentration, because it has built up powers, the mind, it has powers. Even wrong concentration has powers. What is this concentration? I repeat again, there is no mental states called concentration. The mental state they use is ekakata, when the mind is developed and the mind is constantly directed towards the object for a certain period of time, then arises concentration. So there are wholesome and unwholesome concentration. Suppose we talk about wholesome concentration, then there are two types of wholesome concentration. One is the samatha concentration. Samatha bhavana, practice developed on the 40 objects taught by the Buddha, which is samatha objects. Then there is another one, we call it vipassana or insight meditation. So basically, we classify as the two types of concentration taught by the Buddha. In the samadhi, sila, samadhi, panya, in the samadhi, calmness or tranquility, it is branched out into the three aspects. Right effort, right concentration. You develop that samatha concentration for attaining jhanas, mental absorption. There are 5 types of absorption, 5 levels of absorption. And the mindfulness, which is branched out as the 4 foundation of mindfulness, which you are practicing now. We call it direct. The direct method leading to insight or wisdom or realization. The indirect one is the concentration, they gain absorption, and from the absorption, then they gain insight. Then they switch the mind to the 4 foundation of mindfulness, and they penetrate into the 3 characteristics, and they gain enlightenment. Now that is the indirect way, the long way. But if you ask, why do the Buddha teach us the long way? Why don't he just teach one way? Just teach the 4 foundation, finish. Why must it go into samatha meditation? Because there are beings who are through this long period of samsara, birth and death, they cultivated different types of meditation. They haven't come across the satipatthana, the 4 foundation of mindfulness. There are various types of teachers during their rebirth, and they have cultivated different types of concentration. They become very suitable for certain types of concentration, gaining samadhi, suppressing of the 5 hindrances, then they get into insight. And the Buddha taught concentration because concentration is part of realization. Without concentration, there would be no insight wisdom. So concentration becomes an important part, whether it gets into mental absorption or it goes directly the mindfulness way, the 4 foundation of mindfulness way. Now those samatha meditation have mindfulness. Now this is a question mark. There are a lot of writers says that those who practice absorption do not develop mindfulness. They go direct way of concentration. Do you think there is no mindfulness when they go practice direct absorption meditation? It is not so. Remember that. It is not so. There must be mindfulness. There must be mindfulness. When it becomes strong, then the ekaggata becomes strong. Why? Because it is this mindfulness that brings out the object when you meditate. Rising, falling, the mind runs away. It is the mindfulness that knows that the mind runs away. And okay, bring it back. Rising, falling. Oh, I'm thinking again. Oh, there is pain in my body. There is itchiness. Mindfulness knows. Now, there is this continuous mindfulness that builds up the samadhi. Then only you become more and more peaceful as the mindfulness is continuous. Then it gets very concentrated. Then the mind stays there on the object. If you put your mind into one object, it stays there. It doesn't run away. So, in other words, it is this mindfulness, when it is developed, then the ekaggata, the one-pointedness of mind, only one moment at a time. This ekaggata arises only in the 1/17th of moment. It disappears. The ekaggata arises again to another object. Now it is this function of the ekaggata that keeps on bringing all the mental state to this object repeatedly. It becomes concentration. It starts to stay there. Stays in the object with the help of mindfulness. And mindfulness is strong with the help of right effort. Without right effort, there will be no mindfulness, will not be strong. Effort that keeps on bringing the mind back to this object of meditation. It goes away, bring it back. If it stays in pain, then effort to maintain that mindfulness in the pain object. Or if the mind is running, effort to direct the mind stays on the thoughts, efforts. So efforts, 4 great efforts, sustain mindfulness, make mindfulness strong. And when mindfulness continues, the ekaggata, the one-pointedness of mind becomes concentration. That is how it works. So whether it is samatha meditation or it is mindfulness meditation, mindfulness cannot be absent. Can there be concentration without mindfulness? Yes or no? Yes? Yes. When it is no concentration, no mindfulness. When the concentration is unwholesome, there is no mindfulness. Only when the concentration is wholesome, there is mindfulness. It's mindfulness that builds up the concentration for calmness, for tranquility, for insight. Unwholesome concentration has no mindfulness. Why? Because it arises with greed, hatred, delusion. Then the question is, if there is mindfulness that is also strong in tranquility meditation, and there is this mindfulness on the fourth foundation does not go into the absorption, but there is tranquility. That's why when we practice the mindfulness meditation, we get the calmness and tranquility. Just as the other side that meditate on tranquility meditation also has tranquility, it gets into absorption. Why then do the mindfulness meditation do not get into absorption? It's a question mark. Why can't we get into absorption, into jhanas? When we do rising, falling, watching the air element, watching the body, feeling, watching the mind, watching Dhamma. No, because the object is moving. Because it is mind and body object, reality objects. But if you practice the element differently, we practice the air element. But in the tranquility meditation, jhana meditation, there is also air element, but they are practiced differently. They are light, heat element, but they are practiced differently. So, in other words, even though they have mindfulness, concentration is practiced differently. The mindfulness, but they have different chanta, different intention. The meditator have different intention when he meditates. He wants to get powers, he wants to get absorption, he wants to get jhana. So his method is different, and the way of practice is different, object is different. That is why, even though he practices samatha meditation, but the way is different. It doesn't go into the inside. But people can do jhana meditation, but when they reaches to assess concentration, they can switch over to the inside meditation, like what we do with metta meditation, which is tranquility meditation. Once we get the mind peaceful, settle down, then we go to the fourth foundation, rising, falling, or walking meditation. Then when we talk about concentration too much, can there be too much concentration? No, there cannot be too much concentration. We need lots of concentration. We need very strong concentration for absorption. We need strong concentration for penetration, for realization. We need excess concentration, very strong concentration. Then only we see the movement, the impermanence in our rising, falling, impermanence in our thoughts, impermanence in our feeling, body sensation, or mind feeling. But the problem is, when a meditator clings on to concentration, you see, I need concentration. I don't want to let the mind run away. I need to let the mind stay there all the time. But when they have not built up the mindfulness, but they want to apply straight away ekakata, then they get into problem. Then there is giddiness, then they get headache, and then they feel like vomiting, disappointment when they can't get the concentration, they can't hold on to the object, the mind gets stuck and jammed because they focus just to hold on to the object, and so therefore the concentration is not the problem, the attachment is the problem. The clinging to this concentration is the problem. So the meditators develop problems. They can't meditate properly because he wants to hold the mind to this one point. Do not want it to let it go. Mind stray away. He wants to hold on to this object. That is the problem. Not concentration, because concentration has no problem. When it is wholesome concentration, it arises with the 19 cetasikas, mental states, wholesome mental states, and they are all good. They are lightness, they are balance of mind, they are peace, they have vipassana, peacefulness, they have adaptability, they have all these good qualities. They do not produce problem. Concentration that produces problem is wrong concentration. And so when you meditate, it is wholesome concentration. It cannot produce problem. So what produces problem is the craving mind. The mind crave for concentration. That is the problem, not concentration itself. Concentration itself, wholesome concentration, do not cause trouble. It is like wanting to put the roof of the house when there is no wall, there is no foundation. So you become futile. You can't do it. You can't put the roof first, then only you put the wall, and then you put the foundation. It is the other way around. Put the foundation, put the wall, then you put the roof. You need to have right effort, mindfulness built up. Then only you have right concentration. Do you get the point or not? So therefore, it is important to have right understanding. If not, then when you meditate, you have problem, and you don't understand why you have problem. So why am I so giddy? Why am my mind so stuck? Why am I so disturbed? Because you don't understand. You don't have wisdom. So in the 5 faculties, you need to have wisdom. You must understand what to do. In your meditation, what happened to your mind? What should you do? How are you going to balance it? You need the knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge, then there will be no 5 faculties. Then you will keep on meditating, but you go nowhere. That is why a lot of meditators give up their meditation, because they find they go nowhere. Lack of understanding. We should understand the method more clearly. Must understand these mental states more clearly. Once they understand more clearly, then when they practice, they have right mindfulness, right concentration. So the 5 faculties need to be strong, it needs to be balanced, and one is weak, it needs to be proper, developed. If there is no effort, the whole 5 faculties is gone. You may have the wisdom, you may know the way, without the effort, no concentration. So you have the right concentration, you need to have mindfulness. You have a lot of effort, but the mindfulness does not arise because in a sense that the mindfulness is weak, so you can't have right concentration. So it needs to build up until the 5 faculties become strong, equally strong. That's where the penetration is, realization is, when the faculties are built up. So when we talk about concentration, wholesome concentration is never too much, just as mindfulness is never too much. You need lots of mindfulness. You need 100% of mindfulness. And the only thing is concentration. If you don't have the wisdom to go direct into realization, because some crave for psychic powers, so they probably get into absorption, and perhaps even if they gain psychic powers, it disappears when the concentration is weakened. Then again, the mind has to come back again to the normal mind, and they have to start develop again concentration, and perhaps in and out, wisdom arises that it is no use to develop concentration because you get psychic powers, because you can't hold on to it, and they might go into wisdom. So when they come out of absorption, they can get into insight because the mindfulness is also developed. So in the practice of samatha meditation, the mindfulness is still there. That is why they can also gain enlightenment once they don't get into absorption. It falls back to the excess concentration or neighborhood. Next to it is absorption. So when they come out to it, it is like next door. They open the door, it's outside. So when they come out with excess concentration, they could gain insight. They could then see the impermanence of the mental states like absorption, jhana. Go in, they fall out. They go in, they fall out. They see the impermanence. In other words, they then gain enlightenment. So the enlightenment is gained by way of jhana. Just a classification. In the scripture, they classify it as jhana, as wisdom gained by way of absorption. Ours is wisdom gained by way of excess concentration. Upachara samadhi. Samadhi is concentration, but we are upachara, excess concentration. We are not jhana, getting into jhana. Then only we get them excess and gain insight. So these are classification when you read the scriptures. So these are theory, but it helps you to understand in your practice. When you do the actual cultivation, you understand that when you cling on, hold on to this direct concentration, then it causes problem because you can't hold on to it without first developing mindfulness. Alright, any questions so far? If you don't understand what concentration is, then you miss the path of enlightenment. You can't get into enlightenment without right concentration. Yes. 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 There is no wrong mindfulness. Yes. No, he has wrong concentration. The concentration that is motivated by greed or hatred to kill somebody. Then he makes a knife, very sharp knife, and he chuk, make it very point. And sometimes they make it so that when they pull out the knife, you will die. Because when they shot, they poke in and poke out, you won't die. They make it curved that when it goes in and when it comes out, you will die. So the mind very evil, but the mind is very concentrated. You make sure that it has the right points and right curve. So the mind is very concentrated, but no mindfulness, because the mindfulness only brings up wholesome mind. When mindfulness arises, it only brings up all the wholesome mental states. It cannot bring up unwholesome mental states. So therefore, the concentration has no mindfulness. Then how is it so concentrated? Because it is motivated by greed, motivated by hatred, motivated by hallucination. No mindfulness. Mindfulness is only arises in wholesome mind. And in right concentration, there is always mindfulness. So you don't say that in the practice of samatha meditation, there is no mindfulness. That's why they can't get enlightened. No, there is mindfulness, but the intention is different, the method is different, the practice is different. So therefore, they cannot get into enlightenment. They get into absorption. That's the difference. So our mindfulness, our intention is different. We see moving object. If you stay with the object without moving, then the teacher will say, you must go for moving object. You cannot stay on non-moving object. Why? Intention is different. You see the changes, the impermanence, arising, disappearing, arising, disappearing. When you get into samadhi, strong concentration, then you see clearly, and you get into insight. There's no doubt about it. You can see it now as clear as daylight. That's where the insight is. You see clearly, register deep into your consciousness, produces wisdom, different level of wisdom. In the five faculties, the wisdom that is theory, the wisdom that is the practice, and the wisdom that is insight. So you need wisdom all the way from the beginning to the end. The realization also arises with insight, with enlightenment. That is wisdom again towards the end. So right understanding is not only the beginning. Right understanding is the beginning until the end. You must know the practice. The sila, to keep your precepts, you must have understanding. You do not have right understanding, how are you going to keep your precepts? In the practice of meditation, you must have right understanding. To have right understanding how to meditate. If you don't know the proper way to meditate, you get lost. And the right understanding becomes wisdom, insight. When you see things clearly, the wisdom becomes matured. First it's a baby, but as you guide it, growing up, the wisdom matured, growing up, become adult. Is it the same wisdom now? Is it a different wisdom now? It grows out of right understanding, becomes insight. Sila, samadhi, panya. Now is the other way. Morality, concentration, wisdom. Right? Noble eightfold path. Then the right understanding, right thoughts starts in the beginning. It is a different way. If you put it at the end, it becomes realization. If you put it in the beginning, then it is the starting point. You must get right understanding. You must understand what you do, especially in meditation. If you don't understand what you are doing, you find your meditation very difficult. The progress very slow and sluggish. And you don't understand. You get a wrong teacher, give you wrong teaching, you are lost. You are totally lost. So in other words, it is better that you understand yourself. And depending on teacher to teach you, use your own Dhamma Vicaya, investigation knowledge. So in other words, I'm trying my best to let you know as much as possible so that you be a teacher yourself. Because you yourself is the best teacher. You yourself knows your own mind, your own mental states. And you yourself knows how to guide yourself best. Sometimes teacher give you wrong prescription. They give you wrong medicine because they don't really know what's wrong with you. Okay, any more questions?